Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Kimon Hatza and I'm a business attorney and partner at Millcrest Law in Radnor, Pennsylvania. I focus my practice in the areas of healthcare, life sciences, and information technology. Tonight we're continuing our special series on healthcare, life sciences, and technology leaders in the Delaware Valley. Before we get started, I want to remind our viewers that from time to time financial issues relating to healthcare, life sciences, or technology companies are discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the show is pre-recorded and shown at a later time, the information discussed may no longer be current. You should always speak with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm pleased to have with me tonight as my co-host, Charlie Huntington. Charlie is the Public Relations Chairperson of Pennsylvania Bio, and of course Pennsylvania Bio is the voice of advancement for the biosciences industry in Pennsylvania. Charlie, thanks for co-hosting.
It's a pleasure, Kimon.
I was taking a look at the calendar earlier today, and I saw that, boy, there's the Pennsylvania Bio calendar is chock full of things coming up.
Yes,
I was wondering if you could share a few for our viewers.
Would love to. I'll give you one from each month for the upcoming months. So in April, one of our companies, one of our member companies, Rockland International. You remember Jim Fendrick when
Absolutely.
He's president and CEO of Rockland. He was a guest on our show. So they are hosting an event out at it's going to be an art exhibit out in Chester Springs. Mm-hmm. They have not done this before. They are going to honor a young investigator and give him or her an award, and we're looking forward to that. And that is going to be on April 30 from 5:30 at night until 8:30. The second thing I want to highlight is May 7th. You'll recall that's Pennsylvania Bio's annual summer social. So in the past years, we've had a pig roast. We've had dress up as your favorite sports team. It's the one time of the year where casual attire reigns and people just sort of let down their guard, and it's a lot of fun to sort of get to know your colleagues with another dimension.
That's always one of my favorites because there's networking going on, but it's much more relaxed atmosphere. You get to catch up with people you haven't seen for a while.
Exactly right.
Very
event. Well attended. And that'll be May 7th at the Crown Plaza in Valley Forge. Then in June, Philadelphia has not hosted this for over 10 years, but we're pleased to welcome Bio. International Bio is coming back with their convention, which will certainly have about 20,000 people in the city of Philadelphia. So I understand next to the political conventions, it's the most coveted convention around because business tends to stick after showing up there. So it really is an honor for Philadelphia to be a part of that again.
I think that was on the West Coast last year, wasn't it?
Exactly. It was in San Diego. Mm-hmm. That's right. So it's going to be June 15 to 18. So all of the events I just mentioned, our viewers can learn more about on the Pennsylvania Bio website.
Okay, that's terrific. Well, we have a great guest on our show tonight, and I'd like to get right into the meat of our show. Before we do, I'd like to remind our viewers that if you have a question for us that you would like us to answer on a future show, here's how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our hosts and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY-matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
It's now with great pleasure that I introduce our special guest this evening, Michael Koffler. Michael is the president and CEO of Genomind, Inc., a personalized medicine company with offices and a laboratory in King of Prussia. He served previously as the company's chief financial officer. Michael was previously the CFO of First Lab, a leading third-party administrator of substance abuse testing programs headquartered in Chalfont, PA. He began his career in New York, working as an investment banker, first with Wasserstein Perella and later with Rothschild. After moving to southeastern Pennsylvania from New York, he spent more than 5 years at Versa Capital Management, a Philadelphia-based private equity firm, where he served as vice president. Michael received his BBA in finance from George Washington University and his MBA from Harvard Business School. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Sure, our pleasure. How did you first get interested in the healthcare or life sciences industry?
It's a very dynamic space. Regulations are always changing. Technology is always advancing. There is always a large market for healthcare services and products in the U.S. The opportunity to improve patients' lives, and it's just a good place to have a career.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit briefly about your early career as an investment banker and then in the private equity world?
Sure. I was a finance major in college, and as a finance major was looking for the opportunity to get good training. So I went to New York, joined an investment bank as an analyst, and focused on corporate restructuring. So working with companies undergoing either an operational or financial turnarounds. And what I thought would be good training in a few years ended up being 10 years.
Wow. So what led then to your transition to move inside a company and take on a more entrepreneurial type role?
But I've always had an affinity for the startup world, and I thought that if after 10 years on Wall Street, it was time to try something different. I had a few friends who had a lot of success in startups and really enjoyed it and found fulfillment and thought it would be a good opportunity to try something different. So I joined Genomind. I was looking for a CFO or an operational role, and they were fortunately looking to hire a CFO.
Now, how did you first meet Dr. Dzoritz, the founder of the company?
I was introduced by a friend. So Dr. Dzoritz and his co-founder were looking to turn what was then just intellectual property and a great idea into a business. They were looking to hire a management team. They had recently hired a CEO, and I was introduced to the CEO and to Dr. Dzoritz as a candidate for the CFO position.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the origins of Genomind?
Sure. We were founded by a psychiatrist and a neurologist, two clinicians who have devoted their lives to improving the lives of patients with mental illness. So in 2009, when they founded Genomind, genetic testing and personalized medicine was becoming somewhat common in oncology and cardiology, and there had not been many major advancements in psychiatry for a while, and they knew that there was an opportunity to bring personalized medicine to psychiatry, and they founded Genomind.
And you said, now, Dr. Dzoritz, I think you mentioned to me earlier, is kind of a serial entrepreneur. This really isn't his first company.
It's not. He has founded, bought, built, and sold over a dozen businesses, including inpatient facilities, psychiatric hospitals, hospitals focused on outpatient substance abuse. He started a mental health insurance company. He started Genomind. He started a company called First Lab, where I previously worked.
Okay.
He is truly a serial entrepreneur. What's rare is he started his career as a psychiatrist. So he has the rare background of understanding both the clinical and the business aspects.
That's great. We've had one or two people on the show, I think, Charlie, that came out of that kind of a background, but it is rare, and that's wonderful. I'm sure it brings a lot of experience and to bear, when you start a business, coming from knowing how things happen on the practical side as a practitioner.
Absolutely.
How would you say your experience in the financial world, as an investment banker and then in private equity, and then as a CFO of companies, how has that experience helped prepare you to be a CEO of a company?
So some things I did as an investor or an investment banker or as a CFO are directly related to what I do leading a company. Capital raising, budgeting, business analysis, developing and implementing a strategic plan, were all things I focused on when I was on Wall Street or a CFO, and things that I do now leading Genomind. Some parts of the business you just have to learn. You have to learn through trial and error, and you just have to learn as you go. But a lot of the analytical work is transferable.
What would you say is the most challenging aspect of your job, on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. I would say the most challenging, but also one of the most meaningful, is engaging and communicating with and managing all of our stakeholders. So this includes our employees, our corporate board, our scientific advisory board, our research partners, and first and foremost, our clinicians and our patients. They are all crucial to the success of our business, and they don't always have aligned objectives and goals. So managing and communicating clearly with them has been challenging, but also very meaningful.
Has Genomind developed any intellectual property? And if so, what have they developed, Michael?
So we have a genetic test that is patented and can tell a clinician, usually a psychiatrist, but often a neurologist, sometimes a primary care physician, or an OBGYN, 3 things in treating a psychiatric patient. What medications or non-pharmaceutical treatments are likely to work, what treatments are likely to fail or have either adverse effects or no effect, and how to think through dosing. So our intellectual property includes the specific genes that we analyze in combination with a report that we produce using a proprietary algorithm that tells the clinicians clearly how the results are actionable, and it tells them how they can use those results to better care for their patient. So the test, the results, the proprietary algorithm, the report, and a consultation that we provide to the treating clinicians together is what is patented.
So where are you in that development process right now? Is that evolving?
So I'll say that it's always evolving, and we are always working to improve our product. But so far we've had our test ordered by over 2,000 clinicians to treat over 30,000 patients.
Wow. Okay. All in the United States or around the world?
In all 50 states
Okay.
and Canada.
Okay. What would you say was the current need that Dr. Dzoritz identified and said, listen, this is missing in the marketplace, and this has led to the work of you and your colleagues at Genomind?
So as a psychiatrist, he saw and he knew that in treating psychiatric patients, there is unfortunately too much trial and error. And he saw an opportunity for an innovative company that could personalize the treatment and improve clinical care while reducing costs. Okay. And he saw the opportunity was really to serve an unmet need and an underserved market, which is patients with mental illness.
Is anyone or any companies addressing this right now? And if so, how are they doing it differently?
So we do have some competitors in the market, although I would say the biggest competition is really treatment as usual. It's the fact that most clinicians in psychiatry do not yet use genetic testing.
Okay.
They do not yet understand or know that personalized medicine is available for psychiatry, and it's ready for prime time, and it can help their patients. So while there are other companies that take a different approach to the genes that they test and the way they report them, the biggest competition is treatment as usual.
And this is just something I thought of. How long? It sounds like you need a lot of computing power to do what you all are doing. Has this power been around for years and years and years, or has it only been in the last 5 years, decade, that computers have been powerful enough to run the algorithm you're talking about?
So the computing power has existed for a while. What's changed is the speed.
Okay.
So it used to take days or weeks to run genetic analysis. Now it can be performed in a matter of hours. With our test, we produce results within 24 to 36 hours from when the sample hits the lab.
Wow. Okay.
So the biggest change recently is, I would say, speed and also costs, which is coming down.
Thank you.
What made the Philadelphia region an attractive location for Genomind?
There's a good ecosystem for life sciences. So I'll start with most major pharmaceutical companies with a presence in North America either have headquarters or major operations in the Philadelphia area. So that's one. There's a lot of employees there that are potential employees of ours, potential partners, and also there's increasingly many former employees from Big Pharma with a good skill set and looking for new opportunities. There's a lot of research universities that are frankly on the cutting edge. There's a lot of hospitals, and there's a lot of teaching hospitals. So overall, Philadelphia is just there's a pretty vibrant life sciences ecosystem, a very, I'll say, educated and skilled employee base, and a reasonable cost of living.
And this is not, your technology is not something that came out of one of these local research universities, is it? This is, I think we talked about this, previously, before our show today.
No, it came out of, I'll say, several dozen research universities, and what we do is we go through all the available literature, and we try to pick what is best and what is most actionable. So there is an infinite amount of information available on genetic testing. What we do, and what I think is most important, is you pick what is clearly actionable. Good information, a lot of information for clinicians doesn't benefit the patient unless it can help the clinician change the way she treats patients. So we try to narrow it down to what is clearly actionable.
Are you partnering now with any health systems or other healthcare providers in this region in the further development
Sure.
of
So
your business?
I'll start with, there are several dozen psychiatrists in the Philadelphia area that use our test on a monthly or quarterly basis. But in terms of partnerships, just as an example, Thomas Jefferson is doing a study looking at adverse drug response and looking at folks who have no response to antidepressants and the correlation with certain variants that we test for.
Okay.
Michael, how is Genomind presently being funded?
So I'll start with, we have revenue. Fortunately,
Okay.
we're commercial, and most of our funding is revenue from providing our services. Beyond that, we have a supportive venture capital investor in Claritas Capital. They are based in Nashville, Tennessee. They focus on healthcare, life sciences, and business services.
Okay.
And we're also funded by our co-founder, Dr. Dezoritz.
So as you look at the near term and into the future, would you expect those funding sources to remain the same or change?
So they are committed to funding us for the near and medium term, which means for us 1 to 2 years. We are growing revenue, so we expect that to be an increasing source of funds. And we do have some we have gotten some interest from other investors. So what we're doing is we're continuing to grow revenue, and we're looking for the right partner who shares our values and can help us grow and innovate.
What would you say the biggest barriers are for a competitor to get into your industry?
So the biggest barrier, I believe, is developing and really delivering a clear value proposition. So the genetic test itself is obviously, it's crucial. The results need to be extremely accurate and produced timely, but it's everything else that goes around the genetic testing that provides the value proposition. So you need to educate and engage with your clinicians so they know when to use the test, on what patients and at what time. You need to educate them in terms of understanding the results, what they mean, how it is actionable. You need to have the right algorithm to analyze the genetic results and the right interpretation. And it's the entire package that goes around the specific genetic test that's difficult. The test itself is not terribly difficult.
Okay. Just as a follow-up, in terms of educating the marketplace, where does the United States stand with mental health versus other parts of the world? And I'm talking about first world countries. Are we on par? Are we subpar? Are we light years ahead?
Well, I think you have to look at the United States as several different segments. So at the high end, which means for better or for worse, if folks with insurance coverage and with money, the treatment is fantastic. There are fantastic psychiatric hospitals. At the lower end, unfortunately, folks on Medicaid or without insurance are vastly underserved. So there are certain parts of the mental health ecosystem in this country where the treatment is the best in the world, but for all too many, it's lacking.
So if you have resources, if your employer provides health care coverage, you're probably taken care of better than most around the world. But if you don't, then you may be behind some of where other countries are.
I would say that's mostly true, although there is a long way to go. There is a long way to go to improve how we treat patients with mental illness.
Thank you.
Michael, just continuing a little bit on that vein, on Charlie's line of questioning, what would success, what would success look like for Genomind? I mean, a lot of people come on the show and they want to go public at some point. A lot of
Right.
people think we'll take it to a point and then we'll sell the business. I mean, what would success look like for you?
So I'll start with our mission is to improve the lives of patients with mental illness. So we define success as continuing to grow, which means we serve an increasingly large patient base, continuing to innovate so we can improve patient care. And we think that either going public or being sold, that'll be a byproduct of our success. But right now, we're in the early stages of our business. The focus is on getting the best treatment to the highest number of patients.
Have you completed any clinical trials to date?
Oh, sure. We have several trials that have either been completed or are underway. So, for example, we did a pharmacoeconomic study, which was published in the American Journal of Managed Care last May, looked at cost effectiveness and compliance. And in summary, it showed that patients who use our test had a 10% reduction in healthcare costs and a 6% increase in compliance. So one way to interpret those results is the patients were avoiding the wrong medications. They were getting on the right ones earlier in the treatment process. As a result, they were more compliant and they utilized less healthcare, so their costs went down.
Wow. Now, do you have like a series more that you have to go through, or it's not that kind of a thing for your company?
So we have we will always be undergoing trials because our product is always changing. The field of genetics is changing rapidly. Our product is changing rapidly. So I look at our clinical trials are used not just to develop proof that our test works, but also to improve our product. So we will always be undergoing some form of trial, whether it's a research study, a randomized prospective clinical trial, a retrospective analysis. There will always be some studies going on because it helps us improve our product.
Okay. We've had a number of guests come on the show talking about the Affordable Care Act and how it affects their business. For some, it's been a detriment. For some, it's been a positive. Can you tell our viewers how the Affordable Care Act is or is not affecting your business currently and what you anticipate down the road?
Sure. So this is a question that we constantly ask ourselves because we need to have a view on how it will impact us down the road. I will say that first, nobody knows for sure what form the Affordable Care Act will have in 5 or 10 years. It probably won't look exactly like it looks today. But for starters, it's growing the market. So there are millions of Americans who now have health coverage or will have health coverage that otherwise did not or would not. So it certainly is growing our market in that respect. Second, ancillary to the Affordable Care Act, there was other legislation that mandated the parity of mental health treatment with surgical and medical treatment. So it really hasn't been decided exactly what does parity mean, but we know that over time there will be more mental health services covered than there previously had been. And then finally, there's a growing body of evidence that mental health really is biochemical. It really is not just someone's feelings, but it's a serious issue. It's real, it's tangible, and there's just a growing acceptance of it. So we expect that as there's a growing acceptance of mental illness, more folks will come forward and seek treatment, and that treatment will be available.
Okay. We've had, as you know, because you mentioned it early on in our discussion, there are probably 80% of the world's pharmaceutical companies are within 100 miles of the Philadelphia area, and many of those companies in recent years have been laying off a lot of their scientists, particularly people that are in their research and development arms, and a lot of those companies are outsourcing a huge portion of that R&D, leaving a lot of these pharmaceutical employees very highly educated, displaced. Some of those folks are considering, starting their own companies based on some of the work that they've been doing internally at some of those pharmaceutical companies. I'm just wondering whether you have any advice to folks that have been displaced by big pharma who fall into that category and are considering, maybe taking the next step and starting their own, startup biotech company, for example?
My advice is go for it. There is no more job security at big pharma or a large corporation than there is at a startup. I think we've seen enough large corporate layoffs over the years to know that. And I would say the best way to improve your job security, in fact, the only way to really do it, is to grow your human capital. And a startup is a great environment to use your creativity, to force yourself to think out of the box, to do new things, and to have a large impact on a company. So I think from a career perspective, it's a good move. And in the worst case scenario is it doesn't work, but you've learned a lot. And I think employers will like that when you're an employee candidate. I know that when we have people come in and interview for jobs and they have startup experience, I think that's a positive. Regardless of how their startup performed, I'm more interested in their thought process. Are they entrepreneurial? Are they creative? Are they comfortable taking and managing risks? And I think it's a really valuable skill set to build.
For some of these folks, and one of the criticisms I hear lots of times when I talk to people who are maybe investors and are looking at a company to invest in, and they say, they have a scientist who's in love with the science running the company. And as a scientist, they ought to be in love with the science. And some of these ideas are great and may never find, a way to the market. But, and so sometimes one of the criticisms is maybe they should stick to the science and bring in someone, from a financial background, or someone who's a CEO or previously been a CEO of another similar kind of company who knows how to take the company from the business side, from the beginning point, to where you can commercialize that idea or whatever. Do you think that's a real impediment for these folks, or do you not feel as strongly as some may, like some investors who've been on the show, for example, may feel about that?
Well, I think it really depends on the individual. Personally, I think the scientific expert, usually if that is the founder or co-founder, is extremely important to the success of the business. And I think as an investor, I would want the founder who created the intellectual property to be very engaged. Does that mean that person has to be the CEO? Not necessarily. But I think that we've had a lot of success because the values and the passion of Dr. Lombard and Dr. DeZortz really are shown throughout our entire company, and I think it starts with them. And it's important that you have a strong engagement with your scientific leaders, because ultimately that's the product. It's the science. It's what have you created that can help patients, and that comes from the science. It's marketing is important. The business side is important. Running a company effectively is important. But in healthcare, what I believe is the most important thing is having the best product.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, we're out of time, and I'm sure we could go probably for another half hour if we had the time. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show. You were a terrific guest. Charlie, thank you for co-hosting.
Pleasure.
The next guest on Money Matters will be Robert Bavarnik. He's an attorney and founder of Bavarnik and Associates, LLC. Money Matters is now available as an Audible podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, listed as Money Matters, the podcast for mobile devices. The video is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. Thank you all for watching this evening, and we'll see you again next time.